Hello and welcome to Nights at the Game Table. We're here at Pat's Games in Austin, Texas. I'm Kevin and this is Aryeh. Aryeh, what are we looking at tonight?
Tonight we're going to be looking at Pick or Pass for Guilds of Ravnica red cards.
To keep up to date with everything at Nights at the Game Table, all you have to do is click subscribe and then hit that tiny little notification button next to it, so every time we upload a new video, YouTube will be sure to let you know.
And we're going to start out with the red mythic Arclight Phoenix.
I think Arclight Phoenix is a pick. I think in Limited it's a little harder than in Constructed to return it to play. You don't get to play like, all of these charter courses or anything. But even a 4-mana 3/2 like haste guy is very, very good, I think, in Limited. Just by itself, and then if you bring it back once, I think that's great. So yeah, I'm picking that card.
That's
I like
fair.
It. It's good.
Okay, on to the rares. Experimental Frenzy.
Might be the best card in the set.
I've been on the receiving end of it, and it's pretty darn good.
It might be the best card in the set. I mean, there's other cards that are very good, obviously, some of the gold cards, but as far as like monocolored cards, it might be the best card. The thing about this card is that you draw your card for the turn, but then you can play everything off the top of your deck, assuming you have mana for it. Makes the late game just incredible, and it's, other than some Boros decks, it's a relatively slow format. Card's really hard to beat. You should first pick it all the time. Experimental Frenzy. You heard it here first.
Okay, something a little more one-dimensional. The Erratic Cyclops.
I'm going to call Erratic Cyclops a pick. It is a card I've seen go later in packs. But the thing is, it's an 08, which sounds terrible, but it's kind of real scary for your opponent.
It'll block forever, right?
Yeah, it helps you go long, which most of the controlling decks tend to want to do. Fits really well into Izzet, which is where it comes from, I guess, in terms of mechanically. But it is a very large trample creature, and your opponent never quite knows when it's going to go off. So it's a little scary for them to just like wait around and attack a bunch, and then all of a sudden you play 2 spells and hit them for like 10, and they've got like maybe 1 creature left. So it's one of those cards that's a little more challenging to evaluate and play with, but I'm going to call it a pick.
Okie doke. Risk Factor.
Risk Factor is a little bit of a tough one. I definitely think it's probably worth taking in Limited. It's certainly better than most of the commons and uncommons. But unlike a constructed like mono red deck where you have a ton of burn in your deck, you have like Viashino Pyromancers, closing out the rest of the damage in Limited with Risk Factor is a little bit more challenging. But I think you still probably want it in your aggressive decks.
Okie doke. Legion Warboss.
Pick.
Another card we've had on Nights, and it's just always good.
We've seen Legion Warboss go off, and we've talked about it a lot. It's just a great card. Everything it does is great. Mentor, make a bunch of guys, any of that. I'll take it.
Alrighty. Runaway Steamkin.
Runaway Steamkin it revolves a little bit of setup. It only counts red spells, which, again, in Constructed, that's easy to do. In Limited, you're usually playing 2 colors, so you might play it and then have some white cards or something like that, or some blue cards. But I think that the upside of Runaway Steamkin becoming like a 2-mana 4/4 or better at some point makes it worth picking. It would depend on the pack. I think there are some like common spells I would take over it, like some removal spells, but I think it's a pick in most of the packs for sure.
Okay. On to the uncommons, Inescapable Blaze.
I will be escaping from Inescapable Blaze, and I will not be taking this card.
6 mana too much?
6 mana, 6 damage. It is a good finisher in the aggro decks, oddly enough, because it can hit players. So sometimes it's really, really good at the top of your curve, but it's just not a card you need to prioritize in draft. There's just a lot of other cards like creatures, cheaper removal that is typically available in packs. It's certainly a card you can get if you want it late, so I would say just pass it, maybe pick it up on the wheel.
Okay. Here's a card you've had on Nights before as well, Book Devourer.
Book Devourer. I seem to remember my friend hyping going off with Book Devourer in one of our videos where he drew his whole deck.
A pair of them, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Would you pick it?
No.
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 Not even for that.
No, it's a cool option for like a slow Izzet deck in the late game, but it's not a card you need to prioritize in a draft.
Alrighty. How about the Hellkite Whelp?
Hellkite Whelp is definitely a pick. The fact that it deals 1 to an opposing creature, and there's just so many tokens in this set and 1 toughness creatures that you're almost always like actually destroying something for real with it. It also nicely attacks into a 4 toughness flyer because you can ping it and then attack. So I think the card's great, does a lot of things well.
Hard to go wrong with a 3/3 flyer for 5, right?
Yeah, and red flyers in general, I think, are like extra powerful because red doesn't usually get that.
Awesome, awesome. Street Riot.
No.
No. No.
No, Street Riot just doesn't do what you want it to do.
Fair enough. How about a Smelt Ward -4?
I'm a pretty big fan of this guy. The Smelt Ward, the thing about it is that it's similar to the Erratic Cyclops in that it doesn't really look like it's doing much, but your opponent always has to fear that you're going to all of a sudden play like 2 or 3 spells and they just are just dead. You know, and all of a sudden you hit them for a ton. So it's one of those cards that leads to interesting limited games with a lot of like back and forth and thinking about what you might have. So it actually typically has a higher effect on the game than what you would think. Like your opponent's going to have to leave back an extra blocker just in case you play a spell.
What about a Lava Coil?
Lava Coil's an easy pick. I mean, it's a card that's, you know, a 4 of and constructed. It's just a very efficient removal spell. Easy card to always want in your draft deck, control, or aggro.
Okie doke. The Goblin Crater Maker.
I like Goblin Crater Maker. You know, I think Goblin Crater Maker's pretty good. It's a 3-mana shock at worst, I think, which is in limited playable. And in sort of its best case, it kind of either destroys like a big artifact because it can destroy a colorless permanent, or sometimes you just get into combats where you just have it as an onboard trick and it makes your opponent's blocks very awkward. So I like it.
Cool. What about an Electrostatic Field?
Electrostatic Field needs a certain kind of deck. It needs usually an Izzet sort of spells deck or a 3 or 4 color control. The kind of deck that actually would just play an 0/4 wall anyway, that might even have a Wall of Mist in it already. Those kind of decks are interested in this. I think in any sort of more mid-rangey or aggressive type deck, I think an 0/4 is just not what you want.
Generally not.
No.
All right. Goblin Banneret.
Goblin Banneret is a very good card, but I would actually pass it quite often, honestly. I know that sounds a little strange, but the aggressive Boros decks really don't like using their mana on their own turn to activate this thing. It's just an awkward ability. It's cool to have a mana sink in the like super late game, but realistically on like turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, you want to be curving out with creatures. You don't really want to be activating it.
And by the time you're ready to sink it, they're just going to block it with a 2/2, right?
And it's like an uncommon where there's multiple commons in Boros that have Mentor also. So it is a good card, and if it was pack 3 and I was in aggro, I would probably take it high. But starting out a draft, I think it's a card I'd rather pass. I'll take some like Deadly Visit over it or something.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the commons. What do you think about a Barging Sergeant?
I actually really like Barging Sergeant. I know you might be surprised by that. A lot of people, yeah, it's a cool name too. The card actually really always overperforms. I've seen it do really, really good things. It's just one of those cards that just wins a lot of games, you know, where you have to make an attack where you just leave yourself dead to it and they get you. So I like it a lot in the aggro decks. You definitely don't want more than like 1 because it costs 5 mana, but I like the card, yeah. I'd pick it up.
Aryeh, would you command the Storm?
Yes, I like commanding the Storm. It's one of the better kind of 5 mana removals. The best one's Deadly Visit because it surveils. But this one's nice because in like a 3 or 4 color control deck, it's only a single red. So it's a very easy splash for a number of colors. So I like the card. Very simple, 5 damage. Not a lot of bells and whistles on it, but gets the job done.
Okay. If you were at an Izzet party, would you drink the Gravitic Punch?
That might be the best one you've ever gotten on. Yes, Gravitic Punch is actually a great card and an extremely frustrating card to lose to, which I've done many times. It's just a card that really preys on those, like I said, those 3 or 4 color control decks. They have almost no answer to this card, where they just get you low enough and they just play this twice and that's it. I mean, and with a creature, like especially, you know, with a slightly larger creature like a Barging Sergeant, I mean, they could just 8 you with this card, no problem. So
pretty good off 1 card.
Yeah, I think the card's actually something you should think about picking up in an aggressive deck because you almost always want 1 copy.
Okay. How about a Rubble Belt Boar?
I'm bored. But yeah, I can't do it as well as you.
You're on the pun train now.
Yeah, I have to. You know, the boar is boring. Yeah, the boar is not going to get it done for me. It's just the card's fine and you'll play it, but you don't want to take it high. You'll pass it. You might pick it up late.
Alrighty. Cosmotronic Wave.
Cosmotronic Wave is a big pick. This card is extremely good. The fact that it's like a falter, you know, the opponents can't block, that kind of card waxes and wanes depending on the format. But the fact that this card has added onto it, it deals 1 to all your opponent's creatures, and there are a number of tokens and 1 toughness creatures around that this just outright kills. That the card, both being a finisher and also like a semi-removal, the card's great. I think a lot of the aggro decks, you see people play 2 or 3 copies and be totally fine with that.
Nice. All right, and the Wojek Bodyguard.
Wojek Bodyguard is a pick. You may have noticed there's a trend of many picks in
Yeah,
red.
this is a lot of...
Red is one of the best colors, has so many playables, and Wojek Bodyguard's one of the best of them. The fact that you just have 3 power on a mentor is huge. A lot of the time your opponent will try to remove your other creatures so that way it can't attack or block. But in your Boros decks that have like 18, 19 creatures, it just never works. That strategy just like never ever works. You just always have the next one, and then you just keep going, keep mentoring, and especially if your opponent ever stumbles, like misses a land drop, Wojek Bodyguard they're just gone. They're done.
Nice. How about Fearless Halberdier?
Fearless Halberdier I like a lot less. It's a vanilla creature, curve filler if you need it, pass it most of the time if you don't.
Okay. Direct Current.
Direct Current I'm going to call a pass, which is interesting because it's 3 mana, 2 damage, which is usually...
You said 3 mana shocks were okay just now.
Well, 3 mana shock I liked when it was attached to a creature that could also attack or block.
This is also a sorcery.
Yeah, Direct Current just suffers a lot from being a sorcery mostly, honestly. There are some places for it, like I would definitely play it in an Izzet deck if I have cards like Wee Dragonauts in my deck. But in most of like the Boros style decks, it's just too low impact. There's just other spells that do more.
I feel like in a lot of formats this might be a pick, but the red's just so good here that maybe this isn't.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, there have been other cards very similar that have been very, very good, but it's just not a card that either the Boros deck or the Izzet deck really needs.
All right. Fire Urchin.
It's a pass. You do like it in Izzet, but you definitely don't need to prioritize it. It fills the same role as a number of other guys, another 2 drops.
What about the Goblin Locksmith?
Goblin Locksmith is a very good sideboard card against Wall of Mist.
Okay then.
That's it. That's it.
On balance, no then.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's very frustrating. I have been on the receiving end of having 2 Wall of Mists and having a Goblin Locksmith on the other side. But it's not a good feeling.
But no. All right. Well, a different style of goblin here, the Ornery Goblin.
Ornery Goblin I actually love. The card attacks and blocks like it has 3 power, and just like makes all the Child of Knights and all the lifelink tokens just have to sit there forever because they can never attack or block into this thing. Right. So I love it. It's one of the best 2 drops in the set, and I will take it very high, and I love it in aggro and in control.
Okay. Another goblin, the Torch Courier.
No, I will not be carrying the torch for the Torch Courier.
We've had the good goblin. We're now...
Yeah, the card it's just 1/1 for 1 doesn't do it.
All right. Maximize Velocity.
Maximize Velocity is a card I've actually played a couple different times, but it really requires some specific decks, either really hyper aggro Boros, where the haste really matters, or the kind of like a deck with like 2 Wee Dragonauts in it, which is where I played it, where the spell really matters. If 1 or 2 of those is there, you'll definitely want it, but 99% of decks are like, forget this, I don't need it.
All right. Oh, here's one I remember. This was good back in the day. What do you think about Maniacal Rage?
Maniacal Rage is actually a card I've seen very often used on your opponent's creature, which is kind of cool. I saw that at a tournament I played a couple weeks ago, and my friend put 2 Rages on opponent's 2 creatures, and he just won the game. Can't Block is a really interesting ability for this. I think it's pretty good in the aggro deck. I don't think you need to pick it high, but I'd like it.
Okay. And finally, Sure Strike.
Sure Strike is the combat trick that is the hardest to play around just because +3 is huge. It really lets the Boros decks attack into green creatures with no fear, and it's a card you want 1 or 2 copies in all your aggro decks.
So a pick for you?
Yeah, it's a pick for me.
Nice. All right, that has been the red cards from Guilds of Ravnica, pick or pass. Aryeh, thank you once again for everything.
Yeah, it's fun.
And if you have enjoyed this video, come join us in our Facebook group, Game Talk for Gamers, and tell us what you want to see from us in the future. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel down below, and you'll be seeing more of us again very soon.